Hello, welcome to this video where I'm going to show you how I made this decorative upcycled wine bottle. If you're new here, please consider going to my channel and having a look at my other videos. I started out with an empty wine bottle and the labels were a little bit stubborn, so I actually didn't bother to peel them off this time, but I did get rid of that aluminium rim around the neck, and I filed down the edges of the bottle cap. I'm going to be using this corrugated cardboard. It's just normal cardboard with one of the sides peeled off, and I'm just cutting off a piece that is large enough to go all around my bottle. And then from the leftover, I'm just going to cut another piece that fits around the neck of the bottle. And I'm going to be using hot glue to secure all of this to the glass. Hot glue should be good enough to hold this. It is just a decorative object. It's not going to go through a lot of wear and tear, so it should be fine. I'm going to be using this yarn. It's probably some sort of synthetic yarn, and I'm going to wind it all around on areas of the bottle that are naked of the cardboard. And first I'm just using some hot glue to be able to get some tracks. I'm not very concerned with how perfect it is at this stage. I just needed something to work as an anchor, because glass is obviously very slippery, and PVA glue does work on glass, but it would be sliding around a lot and it would have made my life a lot harder. So I'm switching over to PVA glue, and I'm using the same yarn to wind on these areas, but this time I'm being more careful and I'm laying down the yarn close to each other to fill in all of those gaps, and I'm using kind of the tracks that were created with the first application of the hot glue and yarn. And I've basically done the same for the other areas and the bottle cap as well. Obviously this is not the color I want my bottle to be, so I'm using some acrylic paint, first in this royal blue. It's kind of dark, but it works really well for a background, and I'm just painting the whole bottle, including the yarn sections. After this first layer of paint has dried, I'm using sort of like a light baby blue, and I'm kind of overbrushed on the corrugated cardboard areas, and on the yarn areas I'm applying this sort of mustard yellow acrylic paint and really saturating the fibers, making sure that what once was the fluffy yarn now becomes sort of like a solid surface. So for decorations, I'm going to be using a selection of plastic plants. I have some silk leaves. I have these little spiky things that are actually plastic. and I have some silk flowers. Of course, everything needs painting, so I'm using kind of a creamy quality acrylic paint that works better on plastic for all of these, and I'm using a sort of olive green for the leaves and the spiky bits as well. I've also gathered some of the stamens from the silk flowers, and I'm just disassembling them, getting rid of the plastic green thing that was holding them together, and painting the stalks of the stamens with the same green color as well. I actually didn't turn on my camera for this part, but I painted those light purple flowers in a nice blue that matches the bottle. And I'm just using a little bit of yellow acrylic paint to dab over the yarn areas, just to bring out some of that texture. I'm using the same paint so that it coordinates to paint the little stamens at the very tops of them. Just being careful and sort of blending it in with the green stalks a little bit. I'm doing the same thing for the little middle parts of the flowers. And I actually decided to dry brush over the spiky bits as well to give a little bit more dimension, and I really like the outcome of this. Just a plain one color usually looks too artificial. I mean, nothing is really realistic in what I do, but it does give a little bit more visual texture. And that's what I'm doing here. I just made a wash of sort of brownish green color, and I'm just applying it to mostly the middle of the leaves and sort of spreading it with my fingers to have that extra layer of dimension. And I've actually started using a dark blue for the edges of the flower, but this really wasn't working out, so after I ruined the first one, I just put it aside and pulled out a different, a slightly darker blue acrylic paint, and I just used my finger to dab those edges and catch the raised areas, and that looked a lot better. And I actually decided to smear just a little bit of blue on the yellow stamens as well. It just matches a little bit better. And finally, I'm using a very light green over the leaves, because these silk leaves actually have a little bit of variegated texture, and I wanted to make sure that that shows up. And I'm just using my fingers because that's the most convenient. And after the bottle has fully dried, it's actually time for the fun part, applying all of the leaves and flowers and deciding what goes where. I'm just using hot glue to attach everything. I started with the bottle cap, and I made this little arrangement of leaves and flowers and one of those spiky plant things. And this kind of set the tone for how everything else was going to turn out. So as you can see, I'm just not quite randomly, but sort of working with the materials that I have, arranging them in little clusters that look aesthetically pleasing to me. there is a sort of internal logic to it, but it also has a little bit of randomness to it and kind of like an organic feel, so there is no real pattern. And I'm just repeating those elements of leaves, flowers, spiky things, and making cute little clusters. And I'm only making these clusters at the top of the bottle and of course on the cap. I did consider putting some at the bottom, but I decided against it primarily for practical reasons, because I'm more likely to grab it by the bottom to move it around, and yeah, it just didn't feel right to me. And finally, I'm actually using all of those little stamens that I previously painted to add here and there to my little clusters. This last part of the project, when I'm putting things together, is always the most fun part to me, and I always wish that it would last longer. And finally, I'm just going in with a little bit of that yellow paint to correct some of the mistakes that I may have made. And there it is, my bottle is done and ready to go into my collection of upcycled bottles. I've attached some pictures now at the end of the video, so you can have some still shots and have a chance to look at some of the details up close. I hope you enjoyed watching my video. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear some feedback from you. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a nice day. Bye.